Revenge office stories. The CEO of my company once called me a complete nobody in front of 100 of my coworkers. He thought I was just part of the furniture in an office he owned. What he didn't know was that this nobody was about to use a dusty old policy, one he'd never even read, to single-handedly freeze his billion-dollar expansion. Here's how I did it. If you enjoy stories where arrogance gets a collision course with a well-laid plan, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe. To really get the delicious irony here, you need to understand the world I lived in. I worked at a company called Innovate Dynamics, a name as grand and hollow as the man who ran it, our CEO, Marcus Thorne. If you picture the caricature of a tech bro titan, you're only halfway there. We're talking polished shoes that cost more than my first car, suits so sharp they looked like they could cut glass, and a smile that never once touched his eyes. He walked through our state-of-the-art campus, not like a leader, but like a king surveying his kingdom, completely forgetting that kingdoms are made of people, not just glass and steel. Innovate Dynamics actually started out as a forward-thinking company, a place that wanted to solve real-world problems. But by the time I got there, Marcus had steered it toward one single goal: aggressive, relentless growth. Profit over people. Expansion over ethics. The company's soul had been sold off for stock options. So, where did I fit into this grand machine? My role was, let's just say, spectacularly unglamorous. I was a senior policy and compliance analyst. It's the kind of job title that makes people's eyes glaze over at parties. While the engineers were rock stars and the sales team were charismatic frontmen, I was the stagehand in the shadows, checking the wiring, reading safety manuals, and making sure the whole glittering show didn't just collapse or burst into flames. My job was to live in the world of rules, regulations, and corporate bylaws, the dense, boring text that everyone agrees to but nobody ever reads. I managed the labyrinth of digital archives, the company's entire history, from its founding charter to the latest quarterly reports. It was a lonely gig, but I loved the precision of it. I found a weird sort of comfort in the black and white of rules in a world of corporate gray. Because of my role, I was basically invisible to guys like Marcus Thorne. He'd walk right past my desk and look straight through me. I was just another cog. Honestly, it never bothered me. I preferred the quiet of my work to the loud, performative culture he was building. I was good at my job. The few departments that needed me respected my work, and that was enough for me. Until the day it wasn't. The whole company was buzzing about Project Titan. This was Marcus's baby, his legacy. It was a monstrously ambitious, billion-dollar expansion plan to build a new global headquarters, a sprawling campus that would swallow up a huge piece of land on the edge of the city. This land wasn't empty. It had a small community and a significant local wetland on it. But those were just minor details to be bulldozed in the name of progress. Or rather, in the name of Marcus's ego. He sold it to the press and to us as the future, a testament to our dominance. We all knew what it really was, a monument to himself. The all-hands meeting was where everything went wrong. The whole company, hundreds of us, were packed into the main atrium. Marcus was on stage, pacing with a wireless mic, radiating smug energy. He was in his element. The presentation was slick, full of renderings of gleaming buildings and happy, diverse employees frolicking in perfectly manicured gardens. Then he opened the floor for questions. Most were softballs lobbed by his yes-men. But then a junior analyst from environmental engineering, a woman named Sarah, stood up. Her voice was trembling a little, but she asked a brave question. "Mr. Thorne," she started, "I was looking at the preliminary environmental impact reports for Project Titan. They seem a little light on how we'll mitigate the destruction of the wetland ecosystem. Is there a more detailed assessment?" You could feel the air go still. Marcus's smile tightened. He hated being questioned, especially by someone he considered unimportant. He gave a dismissive wave. "We have the best people on it. Our legal and compliance teams have assured me everything is above board. It's all just paperwork. He then glanced vaguely toward my department. My boss, a man whose main skill was blending in with the wallpaper, physically shrank. Marcus's eyes scanned the crowd, and for one horrible second they landed on me. He didn't know my name. He didn't need to. He just needed a target. "You see," he said, pointing not right at me, but in my general area, "we have whole departments for this stuff. People who just sit around reading documents all day." He chuckled, and a few nervous followers joined in. "Frankly, it's a job for the nobodies. No offense," he added, with maximum offense intended. "We need the visionaries, the doers, the somebodies, to push the future forward. Not to be held back by hundreds of pages of bureaucratic nonsense that some nobody in a cubicle worries about." He didn't have to use my name. Everyone who knew what I did knew he was talking about me, my role, my entire professional life. He took my quiet, careful work and called it meaningless paper shuffling done by an insignificant person, a nobody, in front of everyone. My face burned with a heat I'd never felt. It's a special kind of humiliation, being dismissed so casually, so completely. I just stood there, feeling both invisible and horrifically exposed. The meeting moved on. He answered a few more gushing questions, and it all ended with thunderous applause. I just stood there, a complete nobody. That night, I couldn't sleep. The word just echoed in my head. Asterisk nobody. 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 Asterisk he had no idea who I was or what I did. He had no clue about the power lying dormant in the very bureaucratic nonsense he'd just mocked. He saw my world of policies as a rubber stamp for his ambitions. He couldn't have been more wrong. He had publicly branded me as insignificant. And in doing so, he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Lying there in the dark, the humiliation started to burn itself out, and what was left was cold, hard, and sharp. It was resolve. He wanted to fight with a nobody. Fine. He was about to find out what this nobody could do. The days after that meeting were weird. People who knew me either avoided eye contact, embarrassed for me, or gave me these pitying looks that were almost worse. On the outside, I was a mask of calm professionalism, but underneath a storm was brewing. Marcus Thorne's words had lit a fire in me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about principle. The man's arrogance was a liability, and Project Titan was the perfect example. He was so sure of himself, he thought the rules just didn't apply to him. I decided I would teach him that they did in the quietest, most official way possible. My job, the one he'd trashed in public, gave me a unique superpower. I was the keeper of the company's institutional memory. I had admin-level access to the digital archives, a sprawling tomb of every document created since the company was founded. Board meeting minutes from the 80s, original incorporation papers, decades of policy revisions. It was all there. It was the company's DNA, and I was one of the few people who knew how to read the code. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. I just started digging. My evenings were no longer for Netflix. They were for hunting through the digital catacombs. I started at the beginning, with the company's founding. Innovate Dynamics wasn't always a soulless corporate machine. It was founded by 3 brilliant, idealistic engineers. They believed technology should serve humanity and that a company had a responsibility to its community and environment. Their early mission statements were filled with a kind of hope that had long since vanished. I spent days cross-referencing documents on large-scale projects, looking at every past expansion and acquisition. I was building a mental map of how the company operated, how it bent its own rules, and more importantly, what rules it had forgotten it even had. After almost 2 weeks, I found it. It wasn't flashy. It was buried deep in a subfolder labeled Corporate Governance and Ethics Charter, Revision 2.0 to 1988. The document was a scanned PDF of an old paper original. Most of it was standard corporate fluff. But then my eyes hit a section titled Article 11, the Community and Conscience Mandate. My heart started beating a little faster. I read it once, then twice. It was beautiful. It was a piece of procedural dynamite, left forgotten in the company's basement for over 30 years. The mandate, drafted by the idealistic founders, stated that any capital project over a certain inflation-adjusted budget, a number Project Titan blew past by a factor of 10, that involved significant displacement of local communities or the irreversible alteration of natural environments, had to be ratified by a special body. This body wasn't the board of directors. It was called the Founders' Ethics Committee. I'd never heard of it. Nobody had. I frantically searched for any other mention of it. I found the original bylaws. The committee was to be made of 5 members, 2 appointed by the board, 1 external ethics expert from a local university, and, crucially, 2 legacy seats. These seats were for the longest tenured, non-executive employees, 1 from engineering and 1 from administration. The founders wanted to make sure the people doing the actual work always had a voice. And here was the kicker, the part that made me catch my breath. The bylaws said the committee's vote had to be unanimous. A single nay would freeze the project indefinitely, forcing a complete, top-to-bottom review that could take years. My mind was racing. Had this committee ever been formally dissolved? I dug deeper, pulling up decades of corporate restructuring documents. They'd changed everything else, dissolved departments, rewritten the main charter. But the Founders' Ethics Committee? Not a single mention. It was never used, so it was completely forgotten. It was still there, dormant, but functional. It had never been legally dissolved. Marcus, in his arrogant rush, had his modern legal team look at the current charter. They never thought to dig back 30 years into a dusty archive. Why would they? Only a nobody, someone whose entire job was to live in that archive, would ever find it. Now, for the delicate part, I couldn't just email the board and say, "Hey, know about this billion-dollar killing committee?" They'd bury it, delete the file, and fire me before I could blink. I had to be smarter. The bylaws themselves laid out the process. The committee could be convened by any employee who presented a formal petition to the corporate secretary. First, I had to identify the members. The 2 board appointees were easy, chairs of the audit and governance committees. The external seat was vacant, but the rules defaulted to the head of the local university's philosophy department. A quick, anonymous call confirmed their name. The most important part was the 2 legacy seats, longest tenured, non-executive employees. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I ran a query in the HR database, a system I had legitimate access to for compliance audits. My heart pounded. Longest tenured engineer, George Petrovis, a quiet, brilliant hardware guy in his late 60s, about a year from retirement. He was a legend, known for his integrity and for being privately disgusted with the company's new direction. Then I searched for the longest tenured admin employee. My own name didn't come up. I'd only been there 12 years. The query finished. A name popped up, Eleanor Vance. Department, Records Management. Tenure, 42 years. Eleanor was a legend. A quiet woman who started in the mailroom when the founders still walked the halls. She knew where all the bodies were buried because she'd probably filed the original paperwork. She was retiring in 6 months and was known to despise everything Marcus Thorne stood for. It was perfect. A jury of ghosts. A team representing the very soul of the company Marcus had tried to kill. I spent a week drafting the petition. It wasn't a passionate plea. It was a cold, dry, legalistic masterpiece. It was written in the very bureaucratic language Marcus had mocked. 14 pages, single-spaced, meticulously footnoted, citing the 1988 charter. It calmly laid out how Project Titan met the criteria for review under Article 11 and listed the 5 individuals who constituted the committee. It formally requested the corporate secretary to convene them for a vote, as per the company's own legally binding rules. I made 3 copies, 1 for me, 1 sent via certified mail to the corporate secretary, and 1 I gave to my personal lawyer, just in case. On a Tuesday, I walked to the post office on my lunch break. As I dropped the envelope in the slot, I felt a profound sense of calm. The fuse was lit. I had used the very system I was paid to manage to set a trap. I did it quietly, professionally, and entirely by the book. I was a nobody using the tools of a nobody: diligence, knowledge, and respect for the fine print. Now all I had to do was go back to my cubicle, be invisible, and wait for the explosion. The first week after I sent the petition was deafeningly silent. I went to work every day, my stomach in knots. I did my job, kept my head down, and put on a perfect mask of neutrality. Every time a senior manager walked by, I braced myself. Every email from HR made my heart jump, but nothing. I started to wonder if I'd made a huge mistake. Maybe they just shredded it. Maybe they were building a case to fire me. The waiting was torture. The first sign that something was wonderfully right came as a whisper. It was a Monday morning, almost 2 weeks later. I overheard 2 project managers from the Titan team talking in hushed, panicked tones by the coffee machine. Funding is on hold. They're calling it a procedural review, one said. A procedural review? For what? Site clearing was supposed to start next week. Marcus is going to have a stroke. I pretended to be completely absorbed in my monitor, but I was listening with every fiber of my being. Procedural review. It was happening. My boring little petition had landed and thrown a wrench into the billion-dollar gears. Later that day, an all-staff email went out from the corporate secretary, a man named David Chin. It was a masterpiece of corporate double talk, stating that due to a routine governance audit, all spending on Project Titan was temporarily paused. It was so vague and clinical, but it sent a shockwave of confusion through the company. You don't temporarily pause a project that big. The real fun started the next day. I saw David Chun himself walk over to George Petrovis's cubicle. From a distance, I watched George, a man who usually looked ready for retirement, read a document David handed him. I saw his eyebrows shoot up. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. A little while later, David went to see Eleanor Vance in records. I can only imagine how that went. Eleanor, the keeper of history, being called to serve a purpose she must have thought died with the founders. My petition had forced Chen's hand. His legal duty was to the company's governance, not the CEO's ego. Ignoring a valid petition based on an undissolved charter would put him in serious legal trouble. He had no choice but to convene the committee. The meeting was that Friday. The tension in the executive wing was so thick you could taste it. Marcus, who usually strode through the halls like a hero, was seen darting into closed-door meetings, his face beet red. He was trying to stop it, calling lawyers, threatening people. But he was trapped. The beauty of my plan was that it used his own company's rules against him. To fight it was to admit he wasn't above those rules. The meeting took place in a small, old boardroom. The 5 members were there, the 2 board members, looking deeply uncomfortable, the university professor looking intrigued, and my 2 secret weapons, George and Eleanor, looking calm and resolved. I heard later that Marcus actually tried to crash the meeting, but the committee, citing bylaws against outside influence, had security remove him. The CEO was kicked out of a meeting in his own company. The humiliation was just exquisite. The vote took less than an hour. The 2 board members loyal to Marcus voted yeah. The professor, after reviewing the environmental issues I had carefully highlighted in my petition, voted nay. George, the engineer who valued integrity over growth, voted nay. And finally, Eleanor, who had watched her company's soul get corrupted for 4 decades, cast the final, decisive nay. The vote was 3-2 against. Because it wasn't unanimous, Project Titan was officially, procedurally, and irrevocably frozen. The aftermath was glorious chaos. The official announcement declared the project suspended indefinitely pending a comprehensive governance and environmental review. The stock price took an immediate nosedive. The business press, which had been singing Marcus's praises, ran headlines like Innovate Dynamics Billion-Dollar Blunder and CEO's Hubris Halts Titan Project. It took Marcus 3 days to figure out who did it. 3 days of his legal team tearing through the archives, following the breadcrumb trail I had left, right to the petition with my name on it. He didn't email me. He didn't send his secretary. He came himself. He just appeared at my cubicle, not with rage, but with a terrifying, cold stillness. The whole department went quiet. Everyone was watching. He spoke in a low, menacing whisper. "You," he said, his eyes burning right through me. "A nobody. You did this." I had played this moment out in my head 1,000 times. I looked up from my monitor, my expression calm, almost bored. I leaned back in my chair. "Me," I replied, my voice steady. "I didn't do anything, Mr. Thorne. I just read the rules, the ones you were supposed to be following." I picked up a printed copy of the 1988 charter I had placed on my desk. "It's all right here, in the bureaucratic nonsense, as you called it." His face went from pale to crimson. He looked like he was about to erupt. He opened his mouth, probably to fire me, but then he closed it. He looked around. He saw everyone watching. He saw Sarah, the junior analyst he'd humiliated, staring at him with a new confidence. He realized he was powerless. Firing me now would be blatant retaliation, sparking a wrongful termination lawsuit that would make the Frozen project look like a minor hiccup. I had him, and he knew it. Without another word, he turned and walked away. The king checkmated by a pawn. The sound of his expensive shoes retreating down the hall was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The fallout for Marcus was swift. The board of directors, which loved his arrogance when the stock was soaring, wasn't so forgiving now. An internal investigation was launched into his entire leadership style. They found a pattern of recklessness and a culture of fear. 2 months later, Marcus Thorne resigned to pursue other opportunities. We all knew he was forced out. His picture came down from the lobby. His reign was over. As for me, I became a quiet folk hero in the company. People would walk by my desk and give me a small, knowing nod. Sarah, the young engineer, came to thank me personally. Before they retired, George and Eleanor took me out to lunch. Eleanor held my hand and said, with a twinkle in her eye, the founders would have been proud. The company brought in a new CEO, a woman known for steady, ethical leadership. She called me to her office. I thought my time was finally up. Instead, she offered me a promotion. A big one. She wanted me to head a new department of corporate integrity. My job would be to make sure the company never again lost its way. I took the job. Project Titan was eventually revived, but it was smaller, smarter, and developed with the community. The wetlands weren't bulldozed. They were made into a protected nature preserve. I never set out to be a hero. I just wanted to correct an injustice. I wanted to show a man who thought he was a king that everyone is subject to the rules. He called me a nobody, but he forgot that it's the so-called nobodies, the ones who read the fine print, who check the wiring, who know the rules, who hold the real power. We're the ones who can bring the whole arrogant show to a halt. So that's how the nobody froze the billion-dollar expansion. It's a good reminder that no matter how small you feel, knowledge is power, and integrity is a weapon the arrogant never see coming. What do you think? Did he get what he deserved? Was it perfect revenge, or just a necessary correction? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for listening.